My saved folder on Instagram is primarily made up of 3 different things. First, it would be cute dog videos and funny memes. And secondly, it would be cool builds from The Sims 4 to go with my very cool personality. But the majority of my saved posts go into the third category, delicious looking food that I want to make. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that's guilty of this habit of saving a bunch of recipes with the intention of making them, and then time passes. And I think out of the things that I have in this folder, I've tried maybe a handful of quite a collection of recipes. So today, inspired by Julia Maiten, who makes these really comforting cooking videos. She's done a couple of these videos where she tries some of the recipes that she saved on Instagram or Pinterest, etc. So we are doing the same thing. I have picked out 5 recipes that I want to try. 1 beverage, 1 sweet treat, and then like a bready side dish, as well as 2 main courses. Let's just find them on here. I should probably have prepared this a bit better. Okay, so I thought we could start off nice and simple with this recipe from Green Kitchen Stories. This is actually from 2017, and I think it shows because one of the ingredients listed is to melt some coconut oil in there. And I feel like that's very much associated with that time of like people would make like coffee and blend coconut oil in there. What is that called? Like a bullet coffee or something. But this is just a chamomile and turmeric evening tea. So this one was, as you may suspect, pretty simple to throw together. We're just making tea, but with a few more extra steps. I started by brewing 2 bags worth of chamomile tea, left that to sit for about 5 minutes whilst measuring up the ground spices. So we've got turmeric, ginger, cinnamon and black pepper, then adding a bit of plant milk to the pot and pouring a bit of agave syrup into a mug before filling it up with the tea. I decided to skip on the coconut oil as it just seemed like more of a hassle than anything, making it a bit more difficult to clean the teapot afterwards. What I did like about this one was the big teapot. It lasted for a couple of days and it would be sitting in the fridge kind of as a visual reminder to pour myself a cup of tea and start winding down in the evening, because I do sometimes struggle to get to rest. But I guess equally you could just make a cup of chamomile tea as it is. This here just takes it more into sort of a chai-inspired flavor profile. And I guess it's always a good idea to add a bit of extra turmeric into your routine. And then we've got this very delicious looking recipe for creamy cabbage. This is by callmecadence.tv and the caption is just, I hate cabbage except for this recipe. So that sounds like pretty good praise. There doesn't really seem to be a recipe written out. They've given a guesstimate. So 1 head of cabbage, some butter, but we'll use, butter, half an onion, 1.5 tablespoons of flour, a cup of chicken broth, we'll use chicken broth, 1/4 cup heavy cream, some cheese. Seasonings, I'm not sure because she has I'll see if we can get to that part. So someone's just putting stuff in the bins outside, so that's making a bit of noise. But it was going to be my upstairs neighbor actually pulling her weight and grabbing the bins out to the curbside. But it's not her. I'll have to do it later. Yeah, the seasoning is Grandma Eloise's Garlic Galore. So I'll have to look up what that is. Seems to be some sort of herby, garlicky mix on there. And that is looking pretty yummy. This is the one that I was probably the most excited about making because slightly caramelized cabbage is so good. But I don't think that I did this recipe justice really. Basically, I prepped everything in the evening so that it would be ready to bake once I got home the next evening. But I think I was a bit too eager to get to bed that evening rather than hovering over the stove and waiting for the cabbage to catch any decent amount of color. So it didn't really turn out as nice and soft as I would have liked. I probably didn't slice the cabbage quite thin enough either, but the stem was kind of tiny, so I was thinking it would all just fall apart and make a mess. Then the addition of the vegan chicken stock cube was probably a bit overkill too, as that was sort of the dominant flavor throughout, and in combination with the creamy base, I felt it was a bit too uncanny in a way. Maybe vegetable stock would have been the better bet here. If I was to attempt making this one again, I would probably do it in the reverse order. So first bake the cabbage in the oven rather than trying to sear it in a pan, as that is a bit less effort and it gives it a proper chance to caramelize regardless of what my current patience levels might be, and then cover it in the cream sauce on the stovetop. So next up we've got this one from Julie and Amy It is their #1 most viral recipe of 2025, spicy kimchi tofu balls. For this one, it's basically tofu that is marinated in some kimchi juice, sesame oil, maple syrup, some tamari and soy sauce, rice vinegar, and some form of hot sauce, serving with some pickled cucumber and radish. I'll probably just go for cucumber because it's 2 to 3 radishes, and normally you have to buy a big bag of them. And I don't know if you've ever pickled radishes, but it tends to smell incredibly bad. It's super tasty, but it smells horrendous. I guess unless you eat them straight away. For the purposes of this, we'll just go for cucumber. And then we'll serve this with a spicy kimchi mayo. Looks absolutely delicious and kind of like an easy thing to have as a staple dish. This next one was a huge hit. I love a dinner that's just a bowl full of tasty things. We'll start by making a little marinade for the tofu. So combining some of the juice from a kimchi jar, sesame oil, some form of sweetener, light and dark soy sauce, and then some form of vinegar and some form of hot sauce. Then we will marinate the cucumber in some vinegar, soy sauce, the optional chili crisp and sugar, and then setting this aside. For the kimchi mayo, we'll mix together some lime zest, some sriracha, a couple of tablespoons chopped up kimchi, and some vegan mayo, giving this a quick mix. And with these components ready to go, we can start on our tofu, cutting it into cubes, then placing it in a pot of boiling water for about a minute. I've never tried this method before, but supposedly it's meant to remove the step of having to press the tofu prior to cooking. Once the tofu is drained and gently dried, I wasn't quite sure how to do this without breaking it, so I just gently gave it a pat with a tea towel. We'll toss it in the marinade from earlier, and then scoop it into a frying pan with some oil, trying to leave as much of the marinade in the bowl as possible, as this will be mixed with some cornstarch and then added to the pan once the tofu has crisped up a bit. And then you'll serve this on a bed of rice with some edamame beans. And how good does that look? I can absolutely see why this would be one of their most viral recipes of the year. A total 10 out of 10 dinner. Oh yeah, this one. So I remember the first time I watched this video because me and my boyfriend had arrived at this little seaside town outside of Edinburgh, and we were going to a wedding the next day. Normally in a new place I tend to struggle falling asleep a lot because it's going to be unfamiliar noises. It takes me a while to get settled. So I spent most of that night just looking at recipes from Myriad Recipes, and she does some amazing looking things. These ones are feta spring flatbreads. These are not vegan in the way that they are presented, but I'm just gonna swap things over. So like for the flatbreads you're using self-raising flour and yogurt, so we'll just use a vegan yogurt instead, and then filling them with feta. So we'll use vegan feta. It looks easy enough to just do the swaps, and they look really, really good. Actually, there's lots of her recipes that I'd like to try and veganize. For the flatbreads, I started by wilting some spinach in boiling water, covering this and setting it aside, and then combining the self-raising flour and some yogurt, gently kneading this into a dough, wrapping it with some cling film, and leaving it to rest whilst we crack on with the filling. For this one, we will mix the spinach, trying to squeeze out as much water as possible. It always kind of amazes me how little spinach you end up with after wilting it. And then adding some herbs. I just used a random bag of herbs from the freezer. Obviously it was meant to be primarily mint. I think mine had mainly parsley in there, but that also works. Then adding in some garlic, black pepper, vegan feta, and cream cheese. Then we'll divide the dough ball into 4 equal-sized pieces. I'm really not very talented when it comes to dough or baking things in general, so this kind of thing is right up my alley. I mean, look how fluffy it turned out. It's amazing to think that this is just 2 ingredients. So we'll flatten each piece out, add some of the filling in the middle, wrap the edges around to close it, and then gently flatten it out. These will then be cooked in a dry frying pan for a couple of minutes per side. These were so simple and delicious, and I definitely want to try out some more of myriad recipes in a vegan version. And then finally, we've got these no-bake high-protein chocolate cookie dough bites. So this one includes protein powder. We have quite a bit of random bags of protein powder to use up. I don't know, I guess I'll see something and be inspired to buy it, but most of the time it's just a very chalky texture that it provides, and it's not really the tastiest thing. These are like chocolate bottom, and then you make the cookie dough in the middle, which is consisting of peanut butter, protein powder, some almond flour, coconut oil, maple syrup, and vanilla extract. Don't know where that came from. They look really, really good. So we are ending this round with the recipe that may very well be the go-to way to use up the assortment of protein powders that we have. I would say the chalky texture was pretty well hidden in this, and it tastes a bit more like an ice cream sandwich, i.e. really good. So for this, we will melt some chocolate chips in a bit of coconut oil, spreading this to the bottom of a tin or just a piece of Tupperware like I did, and then we'll leave this to set in the freezer for about 10 minutes. Whilst that is chilling, we will mix together some peanut butter, some almond flour. I believe you could also use ground oats, and then the protein powder, some form of sweetener, vanilla extract, and some more coconut oil. Pour this over our solidified chocolate base. Then we'll add another layer of the chocolate chip coconut oil mix to go on top of it. And then we'll leave this to sit in the freezer for about another 10 minutes. And these were really, really yummy. If you're a fan of a Snickers bar, I reckon these are for you. Okay, so that is everything for this week. If you guys enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a like. And as always, thank you so much for watching.